Hey folks, something on my mind since I've been watching a few of those 5 Watt World videos about guitar history, um, either models or specific celebrity guitars. It's kind of interesting. I always find those things interesting. I forget the channel, but somebody also did an extensive um, documentary on Jeff Beck's guitars, and I've seen similar with Dimebag and Van Halen and other guitar greats. And one thing that always intrigues me is just how many people tinker, continually tinker. And it turns out that Jeff Beck was another tinkerer, like Van Halen, like so many guitarists before him. Can't get his hands off his guitars, can't quit switching out pickups, changing necks on guitars, even changing the finish. At least 2 of his guitars he stripped down to blonde, naked wood, and I've seen that for other celebrity guitar players as well, or refinishing guitars, or swapping out necks, or continually swapping out pickups. Not just types of pickups, but styles of pickups too, like widening route joints, putting in different configurations, that kind of stuff. And normally you get people at the lower echelons of guitar tinkering that like to mod cheap guitars, and we talk about that a lot on this channel. But when they get their hands on the prize guitar, whether it's a 50s, 60s Gibson Les Paul, Strat, Tele, something of that ilk, they want to leave it stock. They don't want to change anything. But if you look at some of these celebrity guitar players, they don't seem to care whether something's vintage, if it's a 53 Esquire or Tele, one of the original Sunbursts or Gold Tops, doesn't matter. A lot of times they strip it down, they swap necks, they take the Vibrola or Bigsby off and put something else on, different parts and pickup configurations, often hardware as well, all the way to changing paints or even cutting contours into a flat Tele guitar to make it more comfortable to play, or sometimes changing the shape of things, headstocks, you name it. They've all done it. And I suppose Eddie was one of the great tinkerers with his Frankenstrat guitars. Gosh, everything that he put his hands on basically got chopped and changed. And I'm just wondering if that's the norm or if that's the exception to the rule. This is more of a question video. When you get guitars, are you more likely to chop and change parts, change the look of something, change the finish of something if it's a cheap guitar? Or are you one of these people that really doesn't care if it's a vintage or if it's prime years for a particular model or brand? You're going to make the guitar yours, and it doesn't really matter if people think that's sacrilegious or not. It would seem that a lot of purists would lead us to believe that you're committing some sort of sacrilege on a guitar by altering it from stock if it's something of vintage, or something from the glory years of a particular model. But then when you look at the guitar greats, many of which are passing away each day, unfortunately, rock and roll's an old man now, it seems like they're not really any respecters of particular brands and models. They will chop and change anything to get the best playability out of that guitar or comfort level out of that particular guitar. So an interesting debate, isn't it? And I've heard so many people speak vehemently on both sides of that divide. You often watch the great guitar repairers on YouTube talking about how they get pilloried if they change anything from stock on certain kinds of guitars, like they're committing some sort of violation, or they're um, you know um, graffitiing some gloried past by adding a different part or changing the look or something like that. And then you get people who just don't seem to care. It doesn't matter if it's a $5,000 guitar. It doesn't matter if it's a $25 guitar. They're going to mess with it. They're going to chop and change it, swap parts, swap necks, alter the look, whatever, finishes. They're just going to do it because they cannot stop themselves from doing it. I suppose it's because we're all sort of looking for that perfect playing guitar. That's one reason to make these great changes. Or you want each of your guitars to do something different. So if you've got two Strats, you make one of them do something different from the other one. Whether that's, put in humbuckers, or, add a tremolo, whatever you do, you want it to be different from the other Strat or similar model that you have. So it's just interesting that we're all wired slightly different when it comes to the psychology of owning guitars and playing guitars. I know quite a lot of people don't touch any of their guitars as long as they're set up well and they play well and their fingers do the job on them. They're not interested in trying out different pickups and even strings. They'll take whatever you give them. In their mind, it's your fingers or your amp settings or your effects module that does all of the changing of timbre and quality of tone, things like that. And switching pickups and other ephemerals of your guitar doesn't really aid your playing in any way. You should concentrate on the things that you physically do to shape your tone and not rely on gradations of change within electronic areas. I don't know how you feel about that. I tend to be a tinkerer, but only to fix things. I think of most of the electric guitars I have that are of, let's say, 500 plus status. I haven't really done much in terms of switching out pickups and things like that. I tend to leave them stock, with one or two exceptions. I do have a Strat that I changed pickups on. I think it has the rail hammers or something like that. At least one or two in there. I can't remember. I haven't had it out in so long. But I don't like my Godin is all stock. My Yamaha is all stock. I did change out the tremolo, but only because the first one broke. I couldn't find a replacement, so I had to change the route to accommodate a Floyd Rose. But that's just through necessity. I don't tend to chop and change too much. I will probably change my outboard gear or amps before I get into chopping and changing the electronics of guitars. I suppose I might be slightly different if I had a lot of really, really high-end guitars. I might become a little bit more fussy about how they're wired or how they're configured. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about. Are you a tinkerer? Does it matter what guitar you tinker with? Do you only do it with cheap guitars? Do you buy mod platforms? Or are you perfectly at home taking a vintage guitar of some glory year for a particular brand and changing it, swapping things out, changing the appearance, the look, the feel, the tone, that sort of thing? I'd be interested to hear and what your reasoning is. So put it in the comments below and let's have a good old conversation. I'm sure there'll be a lot of views represented, because one thing I know about the guitar community is, where you've got three people, you've got three vehement opinions on strings or pickups or things like that. So, but I enjoy it. It's fun. So you let me know. Is it only cheap guitars you mod, or is it anything? All right, folks. See you next time.